So there's been a lot of activity, hasn't there, on the global stage from Donald Trump. What stands out to you from this first week?
Up until this morning, I would have said either Gaza, Greenland, Panama Canal, Ukraine, but now it's Colombia. And the threat of tariffs, sort of weaponizing trade relations, vis-a-vis removal policies for illegal migrants, as Trump likes to call them, in the US.
So President Trump is slapping tariffs on Colombia after the country's president blocked the arrival of flights carrying deported migrants. Do you suspect that this will become a fairly regular, common tactic by Mr. Trump?
He has indicated in the past that he will use tariffs, his new favorite term, as he once called it, as measures or as a wedge to get countries to agree to whatever he wants countries to do. And the situation in Colombia is fairly complicated even internally. So the president of Colombia has lost some support as of last week, a peace agreement that didn't come through, then objected against the transport by military aircraft, because these flights have been happening over the last 4 years under the Biden administration with civilian aircraft. So this is symbolism partially, but the response of Trump to just use sort of naked power, if you will, with respect to trade relations, with respect to visas for Colombian government officials, that is something that I think we'll see for the foreseeable future.
One of the other suggestions from the president, which we've been discussing a little earlier, is to move Palestinians from Gaza. He wants Jordan and Egypt to take those people. Those two countries have pushed back against that suggestion. So is this what we should expect from now on, the floating of these ideas, irrespective of the issues and controversy that goes with them?
I think so. Trump is, and I don't like to use that term, but it's a bully in some sense. And for lack of a better term, this bullying is his tactic, right? And he's trying to then get countries to do something. And in this particular instance, I don't think it works because he overlooks the very complex nature, political nature, historical nature of what happened in Gaza. And you just don't get to move 1.5 million people from Gaza to a different territory, to Jordan and Egypt, who don't want to take in refugees. They have done this for decades, and that response was entirely predictable, probably not coordinated with the State Department. And so we'll probably see these off-the-cuff remarks fairly frequently, and we should be prepared for that.
And who's he aiming these at? Is it his supporter base, to be seen to be doing something straight away?
I think so. If you look at anything and everything he's done, both domestically and internationally, it really plays to his base. The messaging, to me at least, seems fairly clearly geared towards we want to be seeing to be doing something. That's true for migrants. That's true internationally. He indicated he wants to solve the Ukraine conflict within 24 hours. All of this is rhetoric, not backed up by action, and the world is far more complicated than what Donald Trump seems to think it is like.
What's the latest on the US gaining control of Greenland? Is that in any way a possibility? He had a very heated phone call with Denmark's Prime Minister.
In Donald Trump's mind, it probably is. I suspect we would have to then look at what the Greenlanders want to do, because under the arrangement between Greenland and Denmark, it really is a question of self-determination. And the self-determination is the Greenlander self-determination. There are some articles floating around, how much money would we have to pay each Greenlander to pay them off to vote to come to our side. I don't think it quite works that way. My suspicion is, or my position would have been much more useful to just try to come to an arrangement that the US wants and Trump wants, namely access to rare earths and minerals in Greenland, access for greater military assets to be placed in Greenland, rather than creating that row, really, and not just with Denmark and Greenland, but with the entire European Union, because once you slap tariffs on Danish products, you're putting tariffs on European products more broadly.
You mentioned Ukraine. How's he going to approach Russia, do you think, and President Putin this time round?
Well, he has, and it's a similarly threatening rhetoric that he has used vis-a-vis President Putin in Russia. I, for one, don't think that's the way forward. But Russia and Ukraine is sort of an intractable problem because Zelensky has clearly indicated, the Ukrainian president, that they're unwilling to give up the territory that has so far been occupied by Russia. How to find a way out of this, I think, is a real problem, and I don't think Trump's timeline, which tends to be fairly short, is amenable to that. I think the best way forward is some kind of negotiated settlement, but that then would require some kind of peacekeeping force or some kind of military force to keep the two sides apart. That might require not only European but also US involvement, and Donald Trump is loath to send troops abroad. So we don't know.
And do you detect any change in his attitude towards US foreign policy second time around, now that he knows, he's more familiar with what he's doing?
In some sense, yes. What we've seen in the last week was partially planned. The quality of it is not where you would expect it to be after having been able to prepare for almost 4 years. So I think much more forceful, but less thought out than we should have expected.